Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 5 of our Euro trip. Today's a pretty simple day. We start in Rothenburg, Tauber, Germany, and make our way down the Autobahn into France and stop in Metz. That's the whole morning, and then we spend the entire afternoon just hanging out in Metz, which was pretty cool. For those of you not interested in the time lapse or listening to me talk for 10 minutes or so, you can skip to the 11-minute mark to see pictures of Metz, France, and what we did there. For those of you who would like to listen to me, here we go. Um, this whole trip, we basically just drove down the Autobahn, and at first, I was probably driving about 80 miles an hour. Um, and Jessica was like, "Well, why are you only going 80? There's no speed limit. You might as well just get there faster." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So we ended up driving about 100 miles an hour for most of the trip, with the exception of course, construction and areas where they did have speed limits, such as near cities and stuff like that. Of course, once you get into France, there's a set speed limit, and I don't know what we went in France. Definitely much slower. So we did end up taking one detour on the freeway here. Once we were getting pretty close to Metz. What we did was we actually set up an Airbnb. Since it's a pretty sizable city, it was cheaper to do an Airbnb there, which was an amazing place. It was very nice. But the guy who ran it wanted us to come around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which wasn't that big of a deal for us. I mean, we could have just showed up any time, but for him at least, that was the best time for him. So we had to waste a little bit of time actually while we were driving. And so Jessica found this picture of this really cool kind of old style town pretty close to Metz. And so we ended up going there. And when we went there, we couldn't find where the picture was. And it ended up that the picture was from a completely different city, that was just kind of a neighboring area. And we just didn't look it up that much to figure out exactly where that picture was or where the location was. But anyways, so we ended up going to this restaurant. And actually, see, now I need to backtrack a little bit. Um, since we spent almost the whole trip in Germany or German speaking areas, we spent a lot of time trying to learn German. And it ended up, all we would ask people in those areas is, "Do you speak English?" Of course, we would say it in German. It would be "Sprechen Sie English?" We'd just say "Sprechen Sie English?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, just a little bit," or whatever. And just a little bit usually meant that they could speak in simple sentences, which was plenty to get by. I think the only places where people didn't speak English was like at the gas stations or something like that, which was still fine because whenever you needed to pay, the price was just right there on the register. So I just look at the register and just pay with that. But then, of course, you go into France, and everyone knows that France is really proud of being French. And so even though they know English, they're not going to speak English to you unless you try really hard to speak their language first. Well, since we spent the whole time trying to learn how to speak German, we basically spent no time at all learning how to speak French. So we ended up going into this kind of a restaurant that we found just to get some lunch. And you go in, and it had the whole menu was displayed above the register, kind of like a McDonald's, even though it was kind of a sit down restaurant. It had the menu up above. So we're sitting there staring at it, and it's all these different things. It's all in French, obviously, and we didn't really want to translate the whole menu on our phones while we're just standing there in front of this guy at a register. And the guy at the register really didn't care. He just kind of stood there and ended up counting money and just basically completely ignoring us. Obviously, we're talking in English. And a couple of people came up to him and spoke French, and he was super nice to them and everything. And he just never gave us the time of day, didn't even look at us or make eye contact with us. And so we're just like, let's go somewhere else. So we ended up getting in our car again and made it into more of the town of France, and we found this little kind of shop area with a bakery next to it. And since it's lunchtime, it was very busy. There was all kinds of people there, and of course, once again, everything's in French, so we have no idea what things are called or what is in them. We're just like, hey, that looks kind of good, we'll have that. Of course, they would not speak English. I even asked them, I said, do you speak English? And without even a hitch, it's as if I had never even said a word. She just kept speaking to me in French as if I knew what French was, which I obviously didn't, because we were just sitting there staring at them with a blank face. So we just pointed to stuff and tried to read what it said on the label, and ended up just getting some. They're really good. It's kind of like croissants and stuff like that, but it was really good. And we ended up just driving over to a little park and sitting on a bench and hanging out there, just wasting some time before we went to the actual apartment to eat, or to stay at the apartment before going into town. Alright, it seems like I'm always running out of time at the end of the video, so I'm just going to start talking about Metz now. We'll start with the restaurant that we ate at. Obviously, it's France, and so the food is always amazing. So our Airbnb host, we said, where do we go to eat? And he said, this is where you go. Go to this place right here. We said, okay, that's fine. And so we ended up spending the whole afternoon just hanging out in downtown downtown Metz, waiting for this place to open. And it was, the restaurant itself basically was a kitchen, and then all the tables and chairs were outside, and it was probably maybe 20 tables or something like that. It wasn't a very large area, and it was right next to a church. And so it opened right when the end of Mass, right at the end of Mass. So it brought all those people over. But we were already there, sitting there waiting, which was kind of nice. So while we waited, here's France, by the way. So while we waited for the church to finish up, we kind of sat there and listened to the choir and everything like that. It was really neat. Anyways, this is why I always run out of time, because I just kind of go on these tangents. Anyways, so the restaurant had a very tiny menu. It was 5 to 10 things. That's all it was. So it was really nice. We could just get on our phone and translate each one of them. And then they asked us if we wanted beer or wine. We said wine. They said red or white. Jessica got a red. I got a white. And that was it. You didn't actually have a list of wines or anything like that. And the red wine was absolutely amazing. And Jessica took a picture of it. We ended up having to use the translator on our phone, and then we just kind of showed her the translation of, can we take a picture of the wine bottle? So she brought the wine bottle over. She was super nice. But yeah, obviously not a lick of English. Never spoke English to us, which is kind of funny. Anyways, so yeah, but it was an amazing meal. We had a great time. So on to Metz. The town itself within the city is 120,000 people, but the whole metro area is about 390,000 people. So similar to like a Salem, Oregon, in the United States here. It's basically a kind of a small town, but big enough that tourism is a very teeny tiny part of the entire city's income. It relies basically on industry and other stuff like that for its income. There are a few cathedrals there, or churches. The main one is the Metz Cathedral, which we have a ton of pictures of here that are going to be coming up in, it looks like about a minute. Another one you're going to see is the Temple Neuf de Metz. There's just one picture of it. It's the black one. And that one was inaugurated in 1901, so it was built in the very late 1800s. And the Tower of the Garrison Temple, which was a church that was built in 1875 to 1881. And in World War II, the church was partially destroyed. Basically, the roof burned down, and they ended up just bulldozing the entire church except for the clock tower. So it's just this huge spire in the sky of this clock tower. And so here we are into Metz. So the Metz Cathedral, which its official name is Saint Stephen of Metz. Obviously, this is it right here. I'm not going to say that in French, or in, jeez, I'm not going to say that in French. Oh, I think I'm having a tough time here. I'm not going to say it in French because it is really hard for me to pronounce French, and obviously I'm having a tough time just speaking English right now. But anyways, the St. Stephen of Metz, it has the largest expanse of stained glass in the world, and the reason for this is the center aisle, or the nave of the church, is one of the highest in the world. It's 136 feet from the floor to the ceiling in the center of the church, basically. And then the side aisles are relatively low in comparison at, I think, 49 feet, which is still very high. But that's basically 85 to 90 feet from the center to the side aisles, which allowed for a very large expanse of windows, which allows for, of course, all the stained glass windows. And that's it. I've already run out of time again. So thanks again for watching. Really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, post it in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.